Thank you all so very much for coming out tonight. It is a genuine pleasure to get to talk to members of the community about the issues that are facing us all. My name is Marshall Hines, and I'm running for Place 6 on City Council here in Leander. I see Leander as a bright light in Central Texas, a place with endless opportunities, which is likely to see massive growth in the coming years, both in the city and the communities surrounding us. We do not have the luxury of burying our heads in the sand and hoping that Leander will continue to be the same place that it was 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. Instead, we should be making it our goal to build a place that can endure the next 50 or 100 years and still be a place that we can be proud of. This election is about a whole lot of things. The questions I received for tonight ask about businesses, they ask about infrastructure and water rates and sales tax, and each one of those items are something that the City Council over the next 3 years are going to be forced to address. But this election is about many, many more things than that. It is about our neighbors, it is about our community, it's about our quality of life, and the natural beauty of the place that we call home. I think some have said that Leander has stifled economic development, the economic development that we are all looking forward to. But the truth is that I disagree. We have endeavored to make sure that the people and organizations that come to Leander share our values. We want them to be stewards of the land that we cherish so much. We want them to honor the families that live and work and play here. We want them to be as invested in Leander as we are. And that has led us to sometimes say no to people that don't have our best interest in mind, that don't have yours and your family's best interest in mind. So that's what I can commit to on council, putting the interests of the citizens of Leander first. Those are the people that I will be accountable to. So there are always places that we can improve, and I'm committed to doing that as well. While on the Planning Commission, I've sponsored a number of recommendations to council, including simplifying ordinances through our development process, highlighting safety and mobility issues, and helping to determine improvements for those issues, and clarifying our tree protection and mitigation policies to better protect that natural beauty that we have in the city. Leander will continue to grow. It just will, and it will by nature change. So what I promise to the citizens of our city is that I will fight for thoughtful and pragmatic discussion of the issues that are facing us, that we won't ignore the needs of those who have helped to make the place that we live what it is today, and that we will work together to build the best city in Texas. So I want to thank the VFW for hosting this event. I'd like to thank the advocacy group for putting this event together and presenting the candidates with issues that they feel are important to our future. So I'd like to touch on a few of those now. About 30 years ago, Leander chose to join our regional transit authority, Capital Metro. I can't speak to the wisdom of that at that time, but I do believe that it will benefit us going forward. As we begin to improve the service provided at our transit station, and see development in the area around it, I'm completely convinced that those two things will benefit each other. Eventually, we can expect Leander Station and the area around it to be a destination for other people, not just a place where our citizens start their commute. It was suggested that we have given away money which would otherwise have brought businesses to the city by paying into Capital Metro. Frankly, I feel like that misses the larger point, that the decision to join the transit authority means that we have an asset now that other cities can be envious of. It's been a slow road, I'll admit that, but I believe that we are on the precipice of truly great development in the area surrounding the transit station. When that comes, I think that we will see that the money has been well invested, and the benefits of that transit connectivity will pay dividends for decades into the future. The next question that I saw on the list asked about my position on new urbanism, and that was suggested parenthetically to be tiny homes and high-density housing, that those were the indicators of that movement. So I'll make a few points. New urbanism, as I understand it, is really about building cities the way that they were built the thousands of years before World War II. Before single-use zoning, neighborhoods grew organically. The uses in a given area were mixed, and as a result, you could access most things on foot. On the periphery, in the more rural areas, you would get less dense housing and uses. These things formed naturally. And so, at least to my understanding, new urbanism is really just very, very old urbanism. And I do think that that is preferable to the restrictionist zoning system that we've used for the past 70 years. So, speaking specifically to policy, I don't believe that we should write anything into our codes and ordinances which limit the ability to build a specific housing type or commercial development. Instead, the move should be to guide the way that development interacts with its environment, the way it interacts with the community. These are things that help build fabric in a community, and that fabric makes the entire area stronger. Let's talk a little bit about economic incentives. This is obviously an important topic of discussion for the advocacy group. Of course, this is a wide-ranging subject and much more nuanced than I can really be thorough about in 15 minutes, but here's my basic position. Sweetheart financial deals that are tailored to get a specific business into town are inherently at odds with building the city that we want to live in. And so setting aside millions of dollars to dole out money to pick the winners in town does not feel like fiscal responsibility to me. When a company has risk mitigated by receiving free land or a city-built business park with below market rent or any other number of financial incentives, it makes it much easier for them to close up and move on to the next town when the next big incentive package shows up and ours runs out. So we want businesses to feel that Leander is their home, not just a pit stop on the way to something bigger. Instead, I think that we should be concentrating on making incremental improvements citywide that make Leander a place that businesses want to be, all on their own. Quality of life items like parks and trails and sports programs, those are things that make people want to put down roots. And that's beneficial to businesses looking for a committed and dedicated workforce. And not to mention, we already have a number of great businesses in town, and I think supporting them and helping them to grow provides just as good of an outcome as luring some big business into town by dangling a check in front of them. 10 local businesses that succeed and thrive and create 10 jobs each, that provides the exact same economic benefit as us bringing a 100-person company to town, and it costs us a fraction of the price. So, something else to consider is that smaller investments that have longer-term overall effects can be useful as well. We have a grant program in Old Town which provides grants for physical improvements to locations in Old Town. That means that regardless of whether or not a particular business is successful, the city's investment still provides value to the community as a whole in the form of improved property, which can be used to support new businesses. We've got to take a much bigger view than just presuming that economic development corporations are some kind of magic bullet. They just aren't. We have to look at the city, and we have to look at its needs holistically and comprehensively. So to that end, let's talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan. I know you've already heard from a few people, so many of you may already know about the comp plan, but just in case anyone here is not clear on that, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So every 5 years, as required by our charter, we have to undertake this process to review a series of documents that make assessments about where we are as a city and provide plans for where we're going to be going in the future. It includes things like where our water infrastructure should be placed, where we're going to need to see future roads. But I mean, it also includes stuff like fire and police safety. It includes our public library. It includes our parks and recreation services and our open spaces. But it also includes guidelines about how the city can best develop. So it talks about goals like increasing connectivity in the city, building strong neighborhoods with diverse housing, and fostering civic pride. All of this is included in the comprehensive plan. It is indeed comprehensive. So that document is then used as a guide to inform adjustments and improvements to our codes and ordinances. So the questions I received were, do these documents address improving our tax base? Are they working today? And what would I do to change them? So to the first point, the comprehensive plan specifically calls out a number of strategies that help build out a network of opportunities for businesses to come to town, some of which have begun, but others we're still working toward. We are still very much in need of available space for businesses to move into. Not everyone has the capacity to develop land when they're building their company. So setting up a new tax increment finance district to help allay some of the infrastructure costs associated with building those needs, that's included in the plan, but it hasn't happened yet. And I do think that's a high priority, something that we should be working to quickly. So in regards to changes I would make, there's loads. We've implemented a few of them. I was heavily involved in improvements to our transportation plan. We've got the Parks Master Plan, which is about to receive an update, and I'd like to see a focus on spaces that accommodate our very diverse community. So more playgrounds, sports fields, trails, etc. I'd also be interested in revising concepts behind our targeted development corridors. We have two types, mixed use and commercial corridors, and I found them to be not perfectly in line with what I believe the intent was originally. They're perhaps more restrictive or more confusing than originally anticipated. But the wonderful thing about these plans, our comprehensive plan and all of the portions of it, are that they're organic documents, and they change along with the city. The council can revise them at any time, but we are required to do so at bare minimum once every 5 years, and that process is open to the public. Now, I think that we have a long way to go in making that journey more inclusive of the community. We generally have meetings at City Hall where we invite members of the community to come out and tell us what they think about where the city should be heading, but I'd love to see us engaging more actively in the places where people live, heading out for meetings in neighborhoods and centers of community involvement, churches and schools and such. That would let us bring the process to the citizens as opposed to forcing them to come to us. And what that will do is it'll make the documents, as we improve them, and those are really at the core of the day-to-day decisions that our city staff make, it would make those documents more representative of the people of Leander. Oh, so the advocacy group asked a number of questions about transparency. So I doubt anyone running for office has any issues making our government completely transparent. We all want that. But I actually think the bigger issue is making our government approachable, making it understandable, making it welcoming. One thing I would love to see improved is expectation setting and process communication that happens between when somebody walks into our developmental services departments at the city and the communication they have with the various departments. I've spoken to small business owners who are thrilled to be in Leander, thrilled to have a thriving business, but they look back on the process that they worked through and they felt like they were flying blind, never really knowing what step was coming next, and more importantly, not really knowing the cost associated with those steps. I'm interested in exploring options, perhaps with the chamber or other organizations that provide assistance to small and new business owners and developers. Something as simple as an advocate to guide you through the process could make things much more understandable. I also see organizations like the nonprofit Incremental Development Alliance as being an asset in finding ways to refine codes that we have on the books to make them simpler, an impartial third party to help us with that. My hope is that any member of our community can start a business and work themselves into that fabric of the community that I spoke about earlier, without our government being a hurdle to them. We should always be striving to help them. So I will wrap up by saying that I'm really thrilled with the discussion of the issues that's come about in this election season. There's simply nothing more important than community engagement in local government. I presume if you are here that you feel the same way that I do, which is that when it comes down to it, the things that happen just down the road at City Hall are the things that truly affect us on a day-to-day basis. So thank you all very much for coming out tonight. Thank you for caring very deeply about Leander, the place that we live. Thank you for wanting to be involved. I genuinely believe that we can work together to make Leander the best city in Texas. Thank you, guys.